10:45?
10:30 technically.
Okay.
Yeah. It's supposed to be 10 to 10:30 with a 15-minute break afterwards.
Okay.
So if you go over like a little bit,
Yeah.
most of them have been going over.
It'll be shorter than longer than it's good.
Okay.
A lot of these are pretty quick slides, so I'll be done about 25 minutes.
Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started because it's a little after 10. I'll give everyone a second to get seated. Okay, for those of you who weren't here earlier, my name is Emma Haney. I'm a horticulture extension agent in Northern Kentucky. And our next presenter is Dr. Kirk Pomper, who is a professor of horticulture here at Kentucky State University. And he's going to be presenting on new pawpaw varieties for Kentucky production.
Great. Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? So, how many of you have tried a pawpaw? Do you know what okay, that's good. Uh, and then I should ask, how many do you have pawpaws planted? Okay, very good. Well, there's a few of you out there who have tried a pawpaw. Hopefully you've liked it and you'd maybe like to plant some. So this will be your talk basically too, and whoever else is interested in pawpaw. It's been a big year for pawpaw, and we actually had the Ale 81 pawpaw release. How many of you have tried the Ale 81 pawpaw? Quite a few of you. Yeah, it was actually made in conjunction with us, and they actually developed the flavor based on one of our pawpaw varieties out here. So it was a real thrill to have an opportunity to work with L81, and I think it really did taste like pawpaw, and that was a really good thing. So, and we also had our international pawpaw conference here in September with over 200 people, and so yeah, it's been a big year for pawpaw, and we released 2 new varieties, which I'll talk about today. So, if you're not familiar with pawpaw, this is what it is, right? It's basically a Simona triloba for the scientific name, but it's in the same family as cherimoya and soursop, and so it's it's in that tropical family, but it's the only temperate member. It needs some chilling to be able to produce flowers and leaves. And so it's a fairly moderate growing tree. It's not a huge tree. I'll show you some pictures in a minute. And a lot of times people call it the Kentucky banana. And you can kind of see that, right? It's kind of like a banana cluster. If you're in Indiana, it's the Hoosier banana, and so on. But it's does have these clusters of fruit. It's actually not a good trait. We actually like to have single fruit that we can just pick and maybe clip at the peduncle, and that way we have don't have a scar at the end, and it keeps longer. But a lot of times you're going to see them in these clusters. And this is kind of the growing zone. You see on the right side and the purple dots up there, that's the kind of native range for pawpaw. So it's really out there all over in the eastern part of the United States. And the green dots over here kind of represent where it's also being grown. It's being planted everywhere in the United States. And to be honest, it's very popular in parts of Europe and Korea and Japan. It's being planted all over the place, anywhere where people get a little bit of chilling, right? And so we've actually got some pretty big plantings in Croatia, and they're making it into various products I'll talk about. But this is often what a pawpaw patch, though, looks like, right? In its native state. It can be all these stems in the understory of the forest. And so it's easy to walk by. You might walk right by lots of pawpaws and they're right there, but there are all these stems, and oftentimes they're big patches and they're clonal because they're root suckers, right? And so they're all genetically identical. And so then sometimes people will email me or call me and say, Kirk, I've got all these pawpaw trees out in my woods and I get no fruit. Why is that? And it's often one of 3 reasons. One is, if it's in the understory, you've got those big trees above, they don't get enough sunlight below to have enough energy to produce fruit. And then you also have kind of a lack of pollinators sometimes. There are flies and beetles are the main pollinators. I'll show you some of those. If you don't have a lot of flies and beetles nearby, you don't get cross pollination. That's the other thing is they need to be cross pollinated. They're not really self fruitful, so you need to have genetically different pawpaw trees nearby. If you got a big clonal patch, right, you don't have a lot of variation. You don't get fruit set. So that's kind of the main reasons, and we get that question a lot. Um, but for us, we're trying to grow them out in orchards and kind of just like you would an apple tree, and I'll talk to you about that. Kind of a banana, mango, pineapple flavor. Some are a little more melon aftertaste. Some are more mango, some are more banana, some are in between. And very nutritious fruit. Kind of some are softer than others. Mango is a variety of pawpaw that's very, very soft. And then Susquehanna is a variety of fruit that's really firm, and so they come in all firmnesses. Very popular as a landscape tree. You can see it has nice fall color, that yellow color, has that pyramidal shape. The reason I've got the butterfly up here is that the zebra swallowtail butterfly, it's a larva only eats pawpaw leaves. So if you see that butterfly around, you know that you've
All
got
right,
pawpaw
thank you guys.
nearby.
Reckon
And so a lot of people
thank you.
plant this for butterfly
It's great
gardens,
to be
right? So
back.
they want to attract different
Usually I'm
butterflies,
up here talking about
and
sheep
you'll
and
get
goat,
that one.
but we're gonna
And
change it
these
up
are
today.
the actual
And
flowers. Now,
I'm still
they
on
actually
small
flower in
brambles,
April and May.
but I also do
I
some
kind of see a change now. I used
some
to,
liver
when I
health and
first came here
the
27 years
connection
ago,
with
it's been a
human
while.
health and animal
I would
health
see
and
flowers
environmental
opening
together.
in like April
So
25th or so.
down
That was
here,
really a common date for them to open.
I've been working with
Now
the
it's
state
more
health
like April
department
5th,
on
or
some
April
zoonotic
10th. And
diseases
so flowering's really gotten
that
earlier.
can go to people.
And
So I'll
so
give you
we see
a real
this
quick
kind of
update
male
on
flower, which is maroon and with the kind of the anthers with some pollen in the middle. The upper flower is more of a female stage flower. They're male,
All
female
right.
parts in the same flower, but they come on at different
I'm
times.
not a
And you'll have these kind of
microbiologist,
glistening
and I hate
stigmatic
this
surfaces when the
technical
female part is
part.
ready.
I'm gonna
And
bring
you
up a
see my
couple
pictures of, here's a lady
here
beetle just
so they
covered
can
in
tell.
pollen, right?
I'm
And then
not
there's a
good in
fly that I captured coming
technical stuff.
out of the flower with some pollen on
Whenever
it. So
we
they're the
start
main
talking about
pollinators.
RNA
Actually, I had a
viruses,
graduate
I'm
student go out and
gonna
catch
tell
all
you
these
about.
insects and
So when
ID
you
them,
think
and it
about
came out to be those
DNA,
were the
the
two
double
most
helix,
common. But
basically
so you think about it,
DNA
well, maybe you
is
could attract
structured like a
flies different
ladder,
ways, right? Put out,
right? Just a
well, people
ladder
put
that
out
points.
roadkill, but you could put out cat
When we
food, you
start
could put out
talking
different
about
things,
RNA
attract the
viruses,
raccoons too.
right,
No,
like
just
the
kidding.
plagues,
But
we start
attract these
talking about
flies to get better fruit
right?
set.
But when you think about
But
the
you do need
ladder,
to have at least two
think about
genetically different
having a 10
trees. So
pollen
if you're
pieces.
thinking about
What
planting,
if you don't have enough?
basically
It's not always
wherever you
stable,
would
is it?
normally kind of
Right?
plant
A ladder's not going to be stable with just one
apple
side.
orchard or a peach orchard, good
The other
good
thing, when we start
soils,
talking about
deep
fungi,
soils. I kind of
the
kid about that. You
fungi
should have
have
like 3 feet
genes.
of soil. Well, here
When
in
we talk about humans,
Franklin
we're
County, a lot of
chameleons,
us don't have that kind of soil.
right?
We've
That
got
one gene
big
mutates and
limestone
you draw
floaters,
blood
but
together,
that's okay. If you can get
right?
them in there, they will
The
kind
virus
of
isn't like
put a
that.
root down
It's only
through
got
those
8 genes on it, so one
limestone
of them
rocks, and
changes.
they'll
It's a
still be
completely
okay.
different beast,
But the
right? Because
deeper the
that one
soil, the
gene
more of
is
a
like
reservoir of
21 of them.
water and nutrients are there. It should be kind of acidic.
All right,
And
so
so
everybody's
in
talking
the
about this high
bluegrass, that's pretty good. We've got
ADO4,
around 7 for pH here, so they do
dirt
pretty
clay,
well. And
H5N3.
you also
It's
have to
got a whole lot of
control weeds.
names.
You can see this is a
What's the
planting
big
out in
deal,
the other part of the
right?
farm.
I'm very
We
much
kind
so
of
what kind of
we
farmer.
sprayed glyphosate Roundup out
So
there to
when
control
one
weeds,
gene
but you can do it
mutates,
at,
it can make a
home in
huge
different ways,
difference.
and I'll show you. You
What
can use
happens on this
mulches if you
flea
want to grow
virus,
organically. You can grow
right,
organically
is the
too,
pathogenesis,
but you
right?
do
I
need to
already said
control the
that.
weeds around the trees because even
Change,
grass will take
right?
up an enormose amount of
Opioid
energy
was in
from the tree, and,
always
and it's kind of shocking
it wasn't a
how
common
much
thing,
that'll reduce the
right?
growth of the
So
tree.
in this virus,
And in
there's
fact,
been a
here's like in my
shift
backyard, you can see the
in
wood chip
other
mulch around the tree.
right?
That works
We're
really,
seeing
really
in
well. You can use
these
landscape
flocks, these
fabric
chicken
too,
flocks,
but it's got to be
big
pretty big
termites,
pieces
big
of
birds.
landscape fabric.
It's that aggressive.
Oftentimes we're putting them
But
8
the
feet
biggest
apart
problem
in rows and
is
then
we
maybe
have something
18
called the
to 20
species
feet
variant.
apart of the
Y'all, I'm a vet.
in the
I'm gonna
alleyways
tell you the truth.
because we
People
want to be able
gross
to
me
drive
out.
a vehicle
There's
through
no
there,
way
right,
I
to
can be a
harvest.
human nurse,
And
except
so,
I don't.
but we do
I
want
do
the trees
people.
fairly close together
And
because
one of the
flies
things that I've
and
always
beetles are
loved
not the
is
they're kind of
most of
lethargic
the
pollinators, right? So they're not
diseases
going to go
that
too
animals
far.
get, I can't
So we want to
catch.
have them
I
fairly
can't get
close together.
parvo,
But you can
right?
plant them at about almost
I can't
300
get chicken
trees per
fever,
acre at that
right? So
spacing. and so you can get a lot of trees in 1 acre.
About catching
And
stuff in
you
my
do want to
pants,
do
right?
probably
A dog food's been
spring
more known
planting.
by
Well,
my
the fall planting will work.
right
Now we're getting a little late,
right?
so I probably wait till spring now. But
What's happened with this is
you can
tree
plant in the spring
inspection,
or the fall if we're a
right?
couple of weeks
Which,
earlier,
like I said,
and
when my
they'll
old
do
house
pretty
was chicken, you
well.
get chicken viruses.
They will
People eat
get kind
people,
of into
but this
hedges
one
in the end, but
mosquitoes
that's
from
not a
all the
bad
different
thing.
types of
They
species,
give a little shading
right? So
to
that's
the
the big deal.
neighboring tree, and that's not a bad thing. So there is, you know, this kind of
So
training
what
versus
animals are
pruning
getting
thing. So I wanted to kind of tell you
so far
what the
that we
difference
know
is.
of?
And so training is when
Humans can
you've
get
got
this
a
done.
young tree
This
and
is
you're trying to
most
get
of
it to grow
African
into the
chickens,
best form possible for later,
birds,
right? And so if you look at
owls,
this tree kind of in this corner down
and
here,
a few other
it's
mammals.
uh it's got some really nice
So
broad
where's the woman
angled
from?
branching.
Right?
Those are really
General
strong
public don't
branches.
want to
Those
get up
will
on
withstand
Pearson
wind,
talk
even
about
if there's
how,
a lot of fruit
all the
on the
diseases in
tree
animals. This ain't no
in
fun,
those. But
right?
something like this,
The
where you've got
reservoir for this
this is
is in
minimally
wild
pruned, you can
birds,
see that there's
right?
just branches, kind of really sharp
Mostly
angles.
waterfowl,
Those are really fragile,
right?
and if you
Let
get
your
a lot of
bees, you're
fruit on
done.
those branches,
But any
and
of
you
the
get a
migrating
windstorm,
birds,
and pawpaws are
right?
really prone to
We
this.
can't
They'll,
kill
you know, have
them
this
because
beautiful
there's
couple of
limits to
clusters on the
things we
branch,
can
and all of a sudden the
do,
wind breaks it down.
right?
And so you
So
want to try and train a
all
tree,
these wild birds
select for those
that
types
just
of
fly
more
up
right
there.
angled branches, or you can even use little limb spacers or
So
weights to try and get the limbs
wildlife,
to
right?
look like that.
Why am I
So
talking about this now?
that's
You're like, well,
called
I've never
central
heard
leader
anything in a
training,
while
basically, when
about
you do that
avian
type of
flu.
training. And so
Well, you heard it
that's
in the
something you want to
spring,
do maybe the
but
first
in
couple of
summertime,
years. It
not as
might
much.
slow down the amount
But
of fruit
what's
you get
happening
for a
now?
year or two,
The birds are
but in the
moving,
end, you're going to have a tree that's much
right? So
stronger
we try to
and be
contain
better
all
for
these
producing as
outbreaks,
you go along.
but we can't stop a goose
So
from
then there's
going from
pruning. So
Alabama
once
to
the tree
Michigan.
gets up to
I
maybe,
mean, that's
you
just
know,
the
maybe it's
fact of
about
it.
five,
And if that
10
bird
years
is
old at
sick,
least,
anything
you
that
want to
flies
start
over,
kind of pruning it back a little bit
it's
each
putting it
year
at risk
to reinvigorate it,
because
right?
of
And
the
you want to get
seasonal
rid of some of the
patterns of
wood that maybe is
migration. And you see
diseased
that
or
chart
at
up
least,
on the
you know,
top
it's got
of how far
damage
those
to it. So
birds
you
can
want to
go,
cut that out. But you do
right?
want to cut
If
back
you're
maybe
worried
about
about livestock, you can
25% of the
report those
tree
birds. If you
and
find a
just kind
dead
of
goose
cutting
on your
back some
lawn,
of those branches that
right?
are going
The
out.
Department of
And
Fish
then
and
also
Wildlife
we
will
want to
take it and
get rid
test it
of
for
the
free,
strongest
right? You can
leader.
go
You
on
see,
the
there's no
website.
real obvious
They
leader
have on their
anymore, right?
website what
So we'll
counties
take out the
that it's been
strongest
in,
leader. That way it grows
right?
out. It's called apical dominance. It really keeps the tree going up.
So let's talk about
If it's still
poultry.
got that main leader, if you take
You
it out,
know,
that
I
leading
grew
branch,
up
then
with
it will
chickens
start spreading
running
out into
around
your
the
alleys, and
barnyard,
that's a good thing.
and
So,
loved it.
but if you can start
And
doing that, your
people are
trees should
now
last at
talking
least
in
25
my day,
years that way. So you'll
absolutely
get a long
understand
lived
the
tree.
term
It won't
about,
run down as quickly. You'll keep
cage-free
getting good fruiting.
birds. Because right now, most our
And
commercial
this is another
poultry
thing. You can look at our
operations
pawpaw
have
orchard out here
everything
if you have a
apart.
chance. Oh, it's kind of
The
nasty today.
birds never go out high,
If
right?
you don't do anything to the
That's to
trunks,
protect the bird.
we get something called Southwest
And
injury,
these
and you get
large
this on
poultry
peaches
operations
sometimes and
always
other
at the
trees
end, the
too.
worst.
But this is the
What they're
southwest
doing
side,
is
and you
protecting
can see
us
it's
from
kind
all
of
of
like the
the
bark is
birds that we
gone, right?
can't
And what
control.
happens is, in the wintertime,
So in
you know,
poultry,
you'll maybe
okay,
February,
our
the tree will
backyard
be hardened off for
fall
winter,
are going to be
but then
more
you
at
get these
risk,
warm,
right?
sunny
Because
days,
they're
and it'll be like,
outdoors.
you know,
And if a goose flies
35,
over them,
and the sun hits
they're
that
out there and
nice
exposed.
dark
Right? Now the
bark,
problem
and it
is on these
warms it
big
up, right?
operations
And so
when you do
then
have an
it loses
outbreak
its
and it's
hardiness. And so
90%
then all of
fatal,
a sudden it goes down to
completely
10
wipes out a
above
million
or
chickens.
zero that night, and it's no
So
longer winter hardy,
those are the
and it
problems
kills
that we're
that
looking
bit
at in
of
poultry,
bark, and that
like
kind of grows the
biosecurity.
tree. And
Except when
so
you
what
have
can
them
you
inside a
do?
barn,
Well, you
you can
can
control
paint
what
the
comes in
trunk
and out of the barn.
white with a
We
latex
used to
paint,
be able to do
basically.
field
It's
trips to some of these big
basically a
poultry
3 to 1,
operations. They'd
one
let the little
part
4-H
paint,
kids
three
come
parts
in and see
water
stuff.
kind of
They'd
thing,
close
and
their
you can
doors.
just
Nobody in
do
and out,
that kind of
right?
spraying onto the
Because
trunks, and that'll
if they
keep
lose
it'll reflect the
90% of the
light,
birds, that's
right?
going
And
to be a
it'll
big hit,
keep that bark from warming
right?
up.
Like I said, for small
And that's
farmers,
just got, you almost have to do it in our
our
orchards
birds
because
being
we have
outdoors,
very exposed
cage
orchards.
free,
If we don't do that, we will
outdoors.
lose just dozens
That's
of
their
trees.
natural
Whoops, I
setting.
got
I
some out
love
of hand.
seeing it.
But
But the
really
fact
important
is,
to
it does
probably
make
do
them
that.
work.
It's a really beneficial thing to do.
All right.
Now,
So
you
treatment,
may say,
there's
well,
no
what kind
treatment
of,
with these birds.
pests
It's a
or
respiratory
diseases do
tract
you have?
infection, and then
Don't
they
have a
die.
lot of
some
pests and
ghosts
diseases, we
fly.
do get this.
They'll
This
kill
is
about
called
50% of them.
Phylosticta or black
Right.
spot.
Trying to
It's,
avoid their
you know, you can see it
exposure
on the
where it's
fruit,
wild
you can
birds.
see it on the leaves.
Right.
And some
Biosecurity
years when
limiting
it's
what's
really a
coming
wet
in.
spring, we will get a higher
They talked
incidence
about
of this.
vaccinating these chickens.
And it won't destroy the
Most
tree or
vaccinated for
anything.
chickens,
And
they
that
actually
fruit is
vaccinate
still
the egg.
edible, it's still fine.
Right. Right now,
It
the
just
only
doesn't look
vaccinated
good. But then if you
for
get too
chickens
much of the
is
black spot on
injectable.
there like that, if you get
Man, these
a
big chicken
sudden rain,
houses, like I
like
said,
rain
have a
event,
million birds
it
in 'em.
loses its
Just go in there,
elasticity and
catch a
it
million birds
breaks
and know
like
what you
that.
did
So
and
now
what you
you've got
didn't do.
this fruit
Okay.
exposed, and it
So
kind of
right
ruins
now
the
we're not
fruit, right?
vaccinating because the
So this
logistics
plastic
of
to
it.
spot is definitely a challenge some years when it's
But I talk about
a
breaking that
wet
species
spring.
barrier.
I've had
So
graduate
some
students try different sulfur sprays and copper sprays, and nothing works
respiratory
real
thing.
well. Actually, it works really well
It's
on the
neurologic.
leaves.
It affects
I
your
just
brain.
can't control it on the fruit
If it
because the fruit
becomes
I think has a
infected,
much
they
more of a
stay on for
waxy
like
surface.
24
So
hours and
anything I spray on just falls off, right? That's the problem.
so they
So there are
actually
some varieties
had
that are
like
worse than others
2 or
for
3
getting
tigers
Phalasticta,
or lions
but
die at
we
one
can
of
go
the
through
zoos,
that
which
later
aren't cheap
if you want.
animals, right?
But at this
Just
point,
because they
it's
got
not a
exposed.
huge
They got
limiting
neurologic and just
factor on pawpaw. It's just some years it's worse than
barn cats.
others.
Everybody's got barn
Um,
cats, or most people
this is
do,
probably your bigger
right?
problem
So the
is
cats
kind
are
of,
ending up being the canary in the
who's
coal
after the
mine,
food you're
right?
also
A lot of
after, right?
times, cats
And so we've
come out
got
and die
raccoons. They
eating
do
after
like
some
the fruit.
finger
Now
animals,
I've got a lot of
they
trees
can
out here,
alert
right? We've
us
actually got 12
ahead of
acres of
time.
pawpaw trees on the farm. I thought when they first started fruiting, we're gonna have every
The
raccoon
biggest
from
problem we
every
got though
county around
is
coming in here to
actually in
eat,
dairy
right?
cattle,
But it was
right?
more just the local
Like I said, this
population. And
virus is
I did
weird
put up
and
field
it's
cameras.
jumping all over the
I've
place
got a
doing
picture of a
different stuff.
possum that almost looks like it's
Now,
out of a sci-fi movie.
when they
It
get
probably
when they
weighs,
get
I
the
don't know,
avian
50,
flu,
70 pounds. It's so
they get a
big
mild respiratory
because it
thing for
loves
like 2
pawpaw and it's
days
eating
and
all
then
these
it goes
pawpaws
away.
out there. But
But they get
but
mastitis in
possum
their udder
definitely will eat
for like 2
pawpaw.
months, and
Raccoons
they shed
love
this
pawpaw. And
virus
at
in
my
their
yard,
milk
I've got about 30
like in
pawpaw
huge
trees. I
numbers.
actually had to buy some
So you
chicken
got
fencing,
chickens, it's
electrifying it
divided.
to
You
keep them
got
out, and they
cats
still made it over
eating the
that a couple of
grain,
times.
and now we got
So
cows
yeah,
and
they
it's in the
love their
udder.
pawpaw, and so it's.
Like I
But
said, this
I think
virus is
after a
doing
while,
really weird
you
stuff.
do kind of, you're going to share a little bit. But if you have an electric fence, with a
Right.
solar
So
charger,
then we
maybe
had
then that'll take care of that
what we
problem if
had
you
to
have a lot
do.
of trees.
California had a mess.
But
Right, those
basically, with the
cows weren't
pawpaw
very
harvest,
happy.
it's kind of the same as when
Right.
you're picking a
Uh,
peach. It's starting to
they
soften a little
test
bit. There's not
at the
really a
phyllo,
reliable
right?
color
When
change
the
on the
milk is picked
skin.
up and taken to the
Sometimes
processing plant,
some varieties will
the
turn a
rest
little
of the
yellow,
milk that comes
but
in
some
for it,
will never turn any
right?
color.
We're
But
doing
the only
part liver
reliable
testing as
indicator
well,
of ripening is softness. And
quarantining
so
the
if you kind of
pollen
touch the fruit
hurts
and it
because these
pulls
cows
away
will get
easily,
over it,
it's ripe,
but it
right?
takes a couple of months
If it
for it to
falls on the
break
ground,
through.
it's ripe too, but you don't really
A
want
lot
to
of
sell those.
stuff in the
So you're
meantime,
going through and just
right?
harvesting. We
So
usually harvest
prevention,
several
keeping the
days a
birds away
week
from
and
your
just go through
cows,
and
but
hand harvest
we
fruit
do bring them in.
and sell those.
Right. So
And
that's
then maybe
easier
you can
said
use
than done.
the fruit on the ground for
Strict
winemaking or
biosecurity
something where
when you
there's going to be a
can.
fermentation
You
step.
know,
But basically,
I've
you're going
never
to be
got a cow
harvesting
to wear a
off the
mask or
same
stay
tree
6
for a
feet away
number of
from each
weeks,
other.
maybe even
I
three
haven't
weeks,
figured out how
because
to
you
do
remember
that
they
yet.
flower over a period of time.
But
I
the
said that,
thing is,
but
they're not going to Walmart
they
either,
tend to have
right?
a
We
kind
can
of a peak
control what's
flowering,
coming on and
but
off
then they still flower maybe for
except
2 weeks after
simply
that.
wild birds.
If you do get a frost, the good thing is you
Beef
probably will
cattle,
still get
beef
some kind
cattle,
of
same
crop.
thing as dairy
If you get
cows.
an early
We just
spring
don't feed
frost
the main
during
cows enough
flowering,
milk
because they
every
still
day
have
when
flower
it
buds
runs
to
through a
open
beef
a little
herd,
later. But
right?
that also
The
means you're
cows
going to
will
be
be off
harvesting
feed
fruit
for a
over a
day.
longer period of
What
time
you usually see
too.
is
So
the
that's
cows
usually late
bawling
August
to
through
make a lot of
September,
milk.
even into October for some varieties that we're going to be
Right.
harvesting.
And humans. Like I said,
And
I did get a grant from the Human
I've
Health
actually got some
Department, so
students
this
who
is
worked
really
on
what
this
they want
too.
me to talk about.
Basically, right now, they're
So in
only going to have
people,
a shelf life of maybe
it
2 or 3
acts like oil.
days when they're
It's
fully ripe.
left
They're really
in
a short
addition to
shelf
having
life. Now,
all the
if you put them in a
respiratory guts,
refrigerator,
you get pink eye
especially like in
over
a
the
container or a Ziploc bag,
eyes will be
they
red and
will
they'll
last maybe
pop.
up to 2, 3 weeks even
And
in the
that looks
refrigeration.
uncomfortable to me.
That's pretty much all we got right now. I've tried using
So, and it can
ethylene
spread.
scrubbers, all
It's
these
going to
different
be at the most
mechanisms to
spread.
try and
Right? You know, our
reduce
dairy
the
milk,
ethylene.
that milk
It
splashes
doesn't
everywhere
work.
we
They
have to
still
park.
ripen. So right now,
Right?
that's
The
kind of where
poultry
we're at
workers,
for fresh market. But you still get a pretty good
and then
window of
people
time of
bring it
maybe
home
about
and
6 to 8 weeks where you
distribute
can
it.
market
Right?
pawpaw fruit with a number of varieties.
So I
Now,
talked
this is
about
another thing you can
in
do.
dairy
You can
cows
process that fruit. And so we've
when
got
it gets in the
a
udder
number of
and it's
ways
shed
that you
through the
can do
milk, like
that.
an extremely
This
high
is
yield.
kind of the first
The good
method. We
news
tried
is,
fry baskets,
even
we
if they
tried
don't hatch it
colanders,
when
we
they
tried different
process
things.
the milk,
Lingerie
pasture
bags. I
raised
bought a
killed them,
lot of
right?
lingerie bags at
So when you
Walmart. People
pasteurize
wonder,
milk,
but anyways,
it heats
but
it
they
up
work
enough
really
to
well,
kill a
right?
lot
You
of the
put the pulp
germs,
and the seed in
and then
there
you
and you
drink it.
squeeze it.
We along the
and the pulp comes out, and the seed stays
pasteurization
behind
was
in the
invented
lingerie bag, so it works pretty well.
100
But
years
you can
ago.
also use
But
a
now there
colander.
are
But
people
if you're willing
who
to
are
pop
trying to
for
go
about
back to home
$100, you
farm,
can buy
right?
this kind of aroma
And
saucer.
want everything natural,
And
and
if you
that's
cut off
great.
the end of the grape
Except,
spiral,
right,
you can
on
separate
pasteurized milk, we do
using
it
the
for a reason.
pumpkin screen. You can separate this very easily. So if you're
It's
interested,
gonna
we could
put
tell
you.
you about that.
There's lots
Hundred
of
and some
nasty
dollars,
things you can get
not
from
a big
drinking hot
investment.
milk,
So
right?
for getting pulp that you
I
can
know
use.
people are
And
like, well,
if you're
when I was a
really into
kid,
it, you can spend a
we
couple
used to do it, but that was
$1,000
a
on
long
this
time ago,
robot coupe,
right? Now we
which
have a lot more of
basically
these
really will do
viruses that can
large
go
amounts and
once
very
species do
cleanly
that,
separate the pulp
right? Even
from the seed.
salmonella.
And so right now
When you were
there's
little
nothing
and
I
you
can do to
used to
get rid of
drink
the
milk,
skin.
your
I have to
stomach
cut
was
the
used
fruit
to
in
it.
half,
Your
squeeze
stomach
out
was used to what was
the
on the
pulp and the
inside.
seed. But at least we've got these two
That's not the
devices
case
that we
anymore,
can use to get pulp.
right?
And then you can use that
Pruning,
pulp in all kinds of
green
good things.
gloves,
You can, as I said, you can
and,
sell them.
and
They're going
y'all,
for about $6,
I used to
$7 a
laugh and say I could
pound right
sit on our
now in
deck
the
chair
various
with a
farmers
fried
markets.
sandwich, right?
At
And
the
a long
Pawpaw
time ago,
festivals,
I
there's a
did that,
Louisville Pawpaw festival that we're
right?
helping
But
sponsor. They
now
were selling
there's
fruit there
lots more of these
$15 a
things that
pound.
can that we can
The
pull,
person who brought a
and I
few
don't
hundred
do that
pounds of
anymore.
fruit this year
I got
sold out in 30
I used
minutes,
to
and
when
the
I was
line
younger,
was like 100 people long yet.
but
So
all of the
it was
respiratory
bad. But there was
bugs,
about
even just all
1,500,
right.
1,700
Let's quit
people at
talking
that
about high
Pawpaw
pathogens.
festival in Louisville
Just
this last
a
year.
regular flu,
And I went to the
the
Ohio
pneumonia
Pawpaw Festival. It had over
vaccine,
10,000 people at it.
right? The
So there's,
COVID vaccine
people are
and
paying a
these
lot of money for
respiratory
Pawpaw
viruses,
at those various festivals.
right?
But even at the
I
farmers
never got
markets,
sick when
the
I was,
fresh market
well, I was
fruit is very
25.
popular.
Could do a
I
lot of
know that
things
Good
like you
Foods
can.
is looking for
I
more
don't realize
folks
I don't
to
eat spring chicken
supply
anymore,
them for fruit too.
right?
They've been
My
selling,
immune system's
yeah,
not what
in
it used to
Lexington,
be.
I know. Um,
And
and
I
of course
didn't
you can
ever
make a
take
lot
off
of
work
great
when I
things
was
with the
sick.
pulp. You
Like
can
I
make a
never
good
take sick
bread. They
days.
make a good
I'll
cream
go ahead and be
brulee and
grumpy and make sure I
basically
spread the love around,
lots of good
right?
products. The beer wine
The thing is
distillation
think about
industry is
this,
where most of the
right?
commercial
If you get
products for
like
Pawpaw
real
is right now.
olive oil,
Besides the
who's
baked
going to
goods
take care of your
and jam's really popular too.
on farms?
Lots of
We don't have
places
sick
carrying
days.
different Pawpaw
The cows
products. This
got to
is
eat, and they
Jeff
don't care how
Creed
you feel.
Pawpaw brandy on this
So
side.
if you get
They've been
pneumonia
selling that
viral and end up in
it's a very
hospital,
popular thing they've been selling at
right?
Jeff
We
Creed
can't afford
Distillery.
that.
Wildside,
And like I said,
Rising
even if you're
Suns
like, oh, I'm
wineries,
tough,
they've
I
been
can
carrying
take it.
Pawpaw wine.
Like I
Number
said,
of
just
other
think, I
places
know a lot
around.
of families.
Of course, down here at St.
My
Lusher,
uncle
they've been
probably
doing
could
Pawpaw
come to you,
beer,
but he doesn't know
and
how
those
many
guys are all
buckets
looking
go
to buy
through each
Pawpaw.
can.
So that's an opportunity is to contract
So
with
in
them
order
to supply
to
them
take
fruit,
care of
and
our
they'll
animals, we
definitely
got to
be
take care of
interested.
ourselves. Because
So
like I
I
said,
will
this
say,
isn't a
just kind
job.
of finishing up with
So
some
if you don't feel
cultivar
good, you just don't go
things.
in,
So,
right?
um,
So if we
what is
want
a
to be able to
cultivar?
take
It's a
care of our
cultivated
animals,
variety,
we've got to protect
and
ourselves too.
pawpaws, are kind of like they're like
All right.
apples. So if you take a
Soapbox
Honeycrisp
enough.
apple, right,
All
and
right.
you take the seed out of it and you plant
So
it,
do not
you're
drink
not
raw
going to get a
milk.
Honeycrisp apple,
Wear
right? Because
goggles, wear gloves,
they're not genetically the same.
right?
The seeds have
And
gone through
take
the
it like
process
a
of
flu
sexual
vaccine.
recombination,
So the
right?
human flu vaccine
And in
is
the
not
horticulture
100%
world, we've been
effective against
cloning
bird
for a
flu,
long time, right? We
but it's
take
close enough.
a
It's going to give
bud
you a little
or a
bit of
cutting
protection.
off a tree that we like, and we root it, or we
All
put it
right.
onto a root stock, and it grows
Biosecurity
up and becomes a
said,
tree.
look, Matt,
And so, like a
right now
Honeycrisp
when I
apple
was in
was selected in
practice,
Minnesota,
the booth I
and
wore to work never
all
came on
the
my farm.
subsequent
I knew
Honeycrisp
what I'd been
trees
around
that are
all day.
planted all around the world came from that one
So if you
original
want a
tree,
backyard,
from cuttings
right,
from those
do not
buds
wear
and
the
then
shoes that you
propagating.
wear on your
So kind of
farm.
a weird thing to think
Right? You're
about,
better
but
off wearing tennis
one
shoes
tree. So
that you can throw in the
basically,
washing machine
you can
when you go
plant
to the yard,
seedlings,
right?
and it's
Because
kind of
that
like your
tree too
kids. They may
is
be
there, and you don't
exactly
want to
like
bring them
you, and
back.
they may not be, right? And so you
All
don't
right.
know what you're going to
So
get,
I'm going to
and
drop
they might
topic
be
for
really
just
good
a minute
varieties, but
because
or
we've got
good
something else
seedlings in
going
terms
on
of fruit quality,
in the
but they
animal
may
health
not.
world.
And so we do
Right? Who's
recommend
heard about
that folks do plant
screw work?
cultivars, these varieties that people have
Right?
selected. And I'll talk
One
about some of
thing
these,
everyone's
and I'll
praying
show you pictures in a second. The KSU
but the
series,
thing is
there's
nobody
a
in here
person called
has ever
Neil
actually seen
Peterson
screw work.
who's released a bunch of varieties from his
We're
breeding
farmers here,
efforts, and those are
right?
named after Native
Habitat,
American rivers.
right? There are flies
And then there's
that
some
we're
other
not going
kind
to
of
kill
ones that have been selected by
that Kirk
enthusiasts
will
through the
never
years.
see maggots.
So basically,
But this is not your
you
average
can
maggot.
try and
This
grow up
is
your
a
own
whole
rootstock
different
too in
species,
place in the field, and then come
right?
back and
We
top
got
root.
rid of
This is
this
what we're
in the
actually
U.S. back
recommending
in the
for a
60s.
lot of people right now.
But the thing
So
is,
you can
it's
grow up the
coming back.
seeds. If you take seeds out of a fruit, don't
Once
let
we
it
do.
dry out because it's a high water
So
content
most
seed.
maggots,
If you dry it out,
right,
it's going to
get
reduce
them
its
in
chances of
vegetables,
germination.
and the maggots
Don't
eat like all
freeze
the
it either.
nitrogen.
Don't put it in your freezer
Like
because
there's
they're
a
high
stuff
water
out there for
content
medical work
that'll kill the
world where
seed.
they
So the
use maggots
key
as
is to kind of
ringworm.
wash off the
Because
seed,
maggots just eat
and
the
we usually put it
digestion on
in
top,
peat moss, wet, moist peat
not this
moss, and then put it in your
So the
refrigerator because
difference
they do
between
need to be
screwworms and all
chilled for
the
about
we've
3
ever seen
months. That they would normally
is
get that
one
outside, right? But you're gonna do it in your
competition,
refrigerator,
right?
and
So they
then
can get
after
on
that, you can plant them out
scratch,
in the spring. And so they'll
simple
probably have
as
90%
choking
germination
away
rate
at a
if you do
table,
all that. And
right?
so that's the way to grow them out. You can grow them
And
out
then
in
they go
pots,
down
or
into
you
the
can put
healthy
them in the ground, but
temperatures,
you have to be very careful
right?
not to let them
They'll
dry
take
out in the
something that
ground
was just a little
before
bit
they
of a
germinate.
nick,
And it'll
and
be
they
like 5 to
literally
8
they're shaped
years
like a screw,
before they produce any
and they
fruit.
screw
So
down
the other
into the
thing you can
healthy
do is
tissues
grow
and
up that
take a
rootstock,
very
that
little
seedling,
scratch and turn it
and you
into
can
a
graft
softball
it.
size hole,
And with grafting,
right?
or if you
They
buy
eat down
grafted
into the
varieties, they're
tissue,
actually
and
going
they
to
these
grow
giant,
and
nasty
produce
worms.
fruit in 3 to 4
They're not
years. So it's a
those
lot
deer.
shorter time
They got on
period.
its velvet ankles,
So you can
right?
do your own
And just
grafting, and we have
literally
grafting
open the entire
workshops usually
plant,
here every
and it's
May
in.
if you want to come learn
And
how to
this
do
is
that.
not something we
And you
want.
can either use like a chip bud like this one up here where we
Good
have a
thing,
bud we put
right?
on the rootstock
I
to let
know
it
y'all
grow
hate
out to
when I say
become the
them take
tree. There's
life
a
cycle.
grafting tool
There's
we
the
can use
boy
that's
and the
basically a
girl
machine
fly.
to put it
That's a
together.
different talk
And
if
there's
you haven't
whip
ever
and
heard it,
tongue, which is a
right?
pretty easy
They mate.
type of grafting that you can do that
She
works
lays
well.
eggs.
So
The
we
eggs
can
hatch
tell you
into
how to do
maggots,
this. So you
larvae,
could buy
right?
seedlings or grow
And
your
then
own
those will turn
seedlings, put
into
them
that
out in the
adult plant.
out in the orchard, let them grow up a year,
The thing about this
then
plant
come
that's
in and do
different than
this
others that
grafting
we
for the
take
ones that
advantage of
survive.
is that
And
female
that's a
only
pretty good
mates
way
one
to do
time.
that. It's
She'll
probably
mate
the
with the male
cheapest
one
way to
time
get those good
in her life
varieties, right?
cycle,
And you
and
could put
then
some of your
she
own mother block
lays eggs.
trees that you can get budwood from too.
So
You could do that if you
what
don't
we've
want to buy the
done, and
budwood.
what we did to get rid of this, and
So
we're about to do
I
again,
do want to remind
is
myself
we
that,
take a bunch of these
so
boy
I said
flies
before the pawpaws are not
and we expose them
self-compatible.
to
So you do want
radiation,
to plant more than
so
one
they're
variety,
sterile,
right? That's the key.
right?
And of course, they
So
all kind of
then
taste a
we
little different, so that's
release
not a
all
bad
these
thing.
infertile boys.
Some
And if
people are going
that
to like
girl
certain
finds a
varieties more
boy
than
that's
others.
infertile, she
And
mates that
so
one
you
time,
need to have those
and
different
then that
varieties so you
girl
get
and her will
natural
hatch as an
pollination.
infertile.
Otherwise, you can use a paintbrush
So
to
what they're having to
transfer
do is
pollen from
take all
one to
these
the other.
flies,
I've actually
right?
done that at the
Expose them to
Franklin County
radiation, and then
Extension
put them to
office
release them.
here. There's
Just
one
take a little
pawpaw
bit of
tree.
time,
And so I brought flowers
right?
from
This
the
situation,
farm
like I
and a
said, we
paintbrush, and I
eradicated. We
pollinated that
pushed it
tree, and
all
it
the way
had
down
more
to
fruit than I've ever
Piedmont,
seen
right?
because
That
I
was the
did that,
line,
right?
and it
Otherwise,
didn't
it really
tolerate
hardly has
releasing those
any
sterile
fruit.
flies.
So you can do that. I've experimented a lot
Boy
on
in the
that. I
first
also
flood,
have
it's both
tried
the
this
containers,
method.
and it's
This
covered up
is
with a matrix,
Tom. Now
right?
he will
As
put
of
his
2 weeks
tail up
ago,
into
it
the
was 70
flowers and get
pounds
the
per million
pollen.
acid,
The problem
right?
is by
So
the time he tries to
it's
get the
there, it's
pollen into a
obviously
female
there.
flower, he runs up another tree.
Problem is,
So that's kind of the
when we
problem
look
with
at
the cat
Mexico,
pollination
it's shaped like a
tail
funnel.
method. But anyways, but
Well,
that's
we
my
were just
cat.
talking
One of my
about
cats,
this
Tom,
supply
who's
from
now
Panama.
been
It's like
imprisoned in the
a
house because he
bullfrog.
does too much running around the neighborhood.
As it's moved up,
So,
we have a whole
and
lot
he's happy
bigger
about
area
it. But
that we got to be
so these are
releasing
some
those
of the
boy flies right.
varieties that
And we only
we can
have one
recommend.
little
So this
factory
is
making
KSU
these boy
Atwood. It's named
flies.
after
So we're
Rufus
on our
B. Atwood.
heels
He was the longest
trying to
serving
build facilities
president of Kentucky State
to
University
make
and
one
also
boy
civil
fly
rights leader. So we
a
wanted to
lot
recognize
faster.
him.
Because
He
like I
also
said,
was an
he's got a
ag
lot
instructor
wider territory.
at Prairie View A&M before he
All right,
came here to be
Kentucky,
president. So it's
are
pretty
they
cool. He's
here?
got a real ag background.
Yes.
And so it's a really good variety. It produces a lot of fruit. It's a mid-season ripening, very mango-like fruit.
Mhm.
This is KSU Benson, named after our
So
long-serving
actually, they're
land
making
grant
brilliant boy
director, Harold
flies,
R. Benson, who
but
was
they're
here for about
supposed to involve
37
radiation
years
so
as
they're
an
all
administrator
infertile.
and did a lot of great
So in
things with
theory, when they
aquaculture and
release these flies,
helped
half of them
helped
are
the pawpaw
girls too,
program a lot. And
but
it's
they're all
also a
blue and
very
purple.
round fruit,
Like
you
I
can
said,
see,
we're
very
not supposed to
round,
be around the
earlier
radiation
season
because it
ripening,
can
very,
cause a
very
lot of
tasty fruit.
infertility. We're
You
doing
can
that on
grow this
purpose.
variety. And then there's
Mhm.
KSU Chappelle, and it's
But
named
like I
after
said, we only
Lucy
had,
and Roy
like, I
Chappelle.
don't
Roy
know how
Chappelle
wide
was a
Panama
Tuskegee
is,
airman,
but as it's
and
moved up, we've got
Lucy
one bigger
Chappelle was
factory.
a civil rights and
All
also
right, Kentucky, can it
social
be here?
worker, person who started a
Sort of,
lot of
right?
housing
46
projects
degrees,
in
we'll say,
Chicago.
right?
So we wanted
We
to
can't
recognize
live at
both of them
temperatures
for their
lower than
work.
46
And
degrees. So
so
right
basically,
now,
it
this
is
winter,
probably
we don't have to
a lot
worry
of
about
people's
it,
favorite. I
and we
love
keep
Atwood, but I
moving
think this one
northward.
has the lowest
In
seed
the summertime, we will.
content. It's really good. It's really flavorful. It's a little
All
more
right.
banana
What's
pineapple,
the
not as
plan?
much mango
They are
flavor,
building new
but it's a
really good
But
variety.
when you get the government
And this
involved,
year, we actually just released these this year.
it's built just to
Casey
build.
Dunnigan.
Because of
And
all the red tape. So they're not
Ms.
as fast
Dunnigan
as
was
they
actually
can,
the first
but it'll probably
African
be
American
spring or next summer
press
before they'll have
person
any
in the
more
White
time
House.
snake and fly.
So she had credential. She was the first one to be
Yeah.
credentialed and a longtime
They're
teacher
doing
in
it,
kind of near Russellville,
but it's a
Kentucky.
slow process.
So we wanted to name it after her. You can kind of see an A,
So
B,
let's
C,
look
D
for
thing here,
like
but
I said, in
anyways, but it's
wintertime,
also
we don't have
because
to
they're
worry, but next
all
spring
very
we will.
deserving folks to be
Right.
recognized.
So
Really
these
good
things, like I
variety,
said, they're shaped
very
like a little
strong
screw.
producer of
The
fruit.
female's
Now
got
this
big
one
red
I'm
eyes,
just gonna have to say. So I
like a blue
I am
metallic.
happy. The
But the chicks, if
university,
you sit
Dr.
there
Capo
seeing
had
the
me in the
actual
office one day. He
flag,
said, "Kirk,
it's
we
gonna be
must
pretty
name a
clear.
pawpaw after you." And I said, "Well,
What you're not gonna
usually,
see are the
you know,
maggots
you have to
like that. They
die
are
to
literally
have
screw
something named
shaped.
after you. I don't really want to
And
die,
when
you
you
know."
do screw into the
But he
importation,
said, "No, you must do it." So
right, they're larger
so I
than
put
regular
choice at the
plants,
end. So now I
but
can just
also
say
look
KSU
for
choice. It's a really good
wound
one
that suddenly
because
become a
I
giant
don't
one.
like self promotion. But there you go, KSU Pomper's choice, really good
Is it
variety.
drinkable? Yes. All right, I have to
Very
make work.
pineapple-y and mangoey, and so it's got a
Sidector
really
does
good
it,
flavor.
and Dectomax does it.
I really do think
Right,
it's a
so
really great
that's a couple.
variety. So if you
Screwworms
want to
spray
plant
still
any one of
works.
these, you know, you
Right.
should plant at least 2 of these
So it is
varieties. I
treatable.
think you do well.
Uh,
There are some other
but
varieties
you
out
need to
there that you
protect
can
it.
purchase too.
Make clean,
NC1,
grab some
which has
of
been
the
around a long
and just
time. It
put
was
them in rubbing
selected in
alcohol.
Canada a long
Don't
time
have to do
ago.
anything fancy.
Also
Tupperware, container, and
Overleaf,
some rubbing
which was
alcohol.
selected in Indiana.
You
It
can
has a
take it
really
to
nice round fruit
either the
also,
state
and it
vet
has more of a
farms,
melon
right,
aftertaste, kind
or
of a
the
cantaloupe
Kentucky
flavor.
USDA
And then
office,
there's
and they will
sunflower,
look
which
at them and
is
test
a really
them
good
for fruit.
producer, produces a lot of fruit,
Right.
has a good flavor, so it's kind of an all-around workhorse pawpaw that a lot of people plant.
And so, and with this too,
And then
like I
there's some
said,
of the
this
series
is
from Neil
also
Peterson,
exotic.
Potomac,
Right.
huge fruit. You know,
Most
you
of
see
the
only
time people don't get mad at
44
us,
fruit per
but it
tree
does
on average,
happen.
but
So,
huge
so far
fruit
this spring,
and
unless we
really good
have had one
flavor.
person
And then
that
Shenandoah,
has
which has more
screwworms.
fruit. It's a
Um,
very, very, very mild
and
flavor.
crazy,
And
we're
most
down there
people,
watching
it's kind of like a
southern
beginner's
border,
pawpaw, right? And
and
after
it was
you've
a
eaten
human
it for a
coming
while,
up
you
in
want more
Maryland,
pawpaw flavor.
right?
But it's a really good
She had
beginner's
been on a
pawpaw.
cruise
Wabash,
down
which
in
is
the
really
Caribbean,
orange and
and
round,
she came back with
also
the
a really
maggot
good
problem.
variety. And then
Right.
this is probably his best
So when
tasting
it does
variety, Susquehanna. It
affect
wins
humans,
a lot of
right? And
tasting
the flies
contests.
will go up the
Really good
nose
variety.
or in the
It
ears,
doesn't produce a lot of fruit.
right?
That's the only
And those
knock
are
against it.
places that are
Really
looking
good
for trouble as
flavor,
well.
but and not
So,
as much
this
production.
is a
But
human
still
race.
really worth planting
So
if you
we're
would.
doing everything we can.
So if you have more
Like I
questions,
said,
now
with
we
avian
have
flu, we
usually a
couldn't control
grafting
the
event in the
birds,
spring around May.
and
And then we
all of
usually
them
have
were
the
home down
third
east of the
Thursday
border,
of September is
and
Pawpaw Field Day.
to the
So
wildlife
if you
like
get an
deer,
opportunity, come on
those
out
are
and then we'll
migrating.
have fruit in the
So it's
September
moving
field
northward.
day, right? That's when we're in the height of
We're keeping
harvest.
track
So
of
you
it,
can come on out
but it may
and taste some
have
fruit.
another outbreak
But
this
you
spring.
can track us on Facebook. You know, I
Right.
try to make sure we post something every week or two up on
Any
KSU
questions?
Pawpaw. And then also the web page now, which has
Okay.
been redone, and it looks a lot better, I will say. Still kind of transitioning some
Well,
things
so the girl on
over,
the cruise,
but the
you know,
KSU
it was over
website's
on the
been
beach or
kind of
whatever,
upgraded. So
and
if you
they
want, you
laid
can do the
eggs in
QR
there.
code and find out more
And,
information about those
those eggs
things.
can
But
hatch in just a
so
day or two,
I think we have time for some
and they hatched
questions.
into.
Well, we got 10:33. Any questions? Actually, I'll go back to this so you can look at that. Yes.
The eggs themselves aren't itchy when they hatch.
So
They'll
it's a
be
good
fine.
question, and I will say, and I should probably have said this at one point.
You
So
know,
Pawpaw
you
is
would know, I
so
think, if a fly
popular right
wrapped
now,
around us or
because of
something.
all the press and all the
But
interest for the last
but
couple of years,
also, when we start
that
talking
they're
about some
pretty
of these things from
expensive. And in
American
fact, like I
country,
used to direct folks to
they're
buy seedlings at the Division of
not very
Forestry.
well
They
developed.
actually sold
Right? And some of these people
35,000
don't have
trees
the
last year,
necessary
and now they're out,
information.
and they have nothing left for this year.
So we do
But if
feel
you go
bad
to
when people travel from some
Peaceful
of these
Heritage
areas that aren't
a
as
nursery here in Kentucky, they
advanced
sell the
well.
trees.
Most of the time, you would know
One
if a
Green
fly was on
World
the
is
nose.
also an
Most of the time,
online
you'll swat a fly
nursery that
off.
is out
But if it flies up your nose while you're out
Oregon,
feeding,
and also England's Orchard out of McKee, Kentucky is another place you can go. There's some others around. If you go to our website, there's a list of people carrying trees. Now the seedling trees are still going to cost you maybe about $20, $30
it
each. They're not cheap
happens.
right now unless you can find a volume discount. The varieties sell for anywhere from $30 to $100 a
Right.
tree right
Well, with
now,
this
which
girl,
is
like I said,
why I say you probably want to plant seedlings or
her
grow
hair,
your own
I
seedlings.
don't know.
Buy a few of
To me,
those
that just makes
trees
my
or
head
buy the
itch thinking
signwood if
about
you
it.
can,
But it can
and then come and top work those because it'll
Right.
be a lot less money.
You should know.
But those would be the
But on
nurseries to go look
livestock,
at.
like I said, this last case
Other
was
questions?
it was
Yes.
it doesn't need a big wound. It doesn't need them. It like literally these things got on
Yeah.
an ear tag. Just it takes 2 drops of blood to attract them. Right. So it doesn't have to be a nasty gaping wound. Yes, sir.
Mm. Right, and so there's
Yeah.
kinda like those stories, kinda like persimmon.
My
American
eggs
persimmon,
disappear
people
as
say,
well.
"Wait till after the frost,"
It's
which
the
is also not true either
in the
because,
ground, but of course our
American
flies
persimmon,
will
if
come
the
back
fruit
in
is
the
totally
spring.
orange, you
And
can eat
these
it.
kind of act the
It
same
just
way.
kinda coincides with the so, no,
So
you probably you don't
we're
wanna
not gonna
black is when it's already way overripe,
right.
kinda like a banana,
Wintertime doesn't even
right?
kill our
So you
normal
can eat
flies,
earlier. Now the
but they
smaller
do.
size is a problem because that's kinda the genetics probably. You
Right.
will get
Right.
smaller fruit
So
size
we
sometimes
shouldn't
if you
see a
get too
problem
many
until
fruit in a
spring
tree,
because 40,
right?
60
And there's too
degrees,
much competition
right?
within a tree, and you may have
That's
to do
the
some fruit
point of
thinning.
them not
So you can
hatching.
try that, but
Right.
sometimes it's just the genetics, right? And some of the wild trees are just the genetics are small fruit that just don't taste real good because that still keeps the species alive, right? And so as humans, and Native Americans selected for probably quite a few of the fruit that kind of have been brought north
Mhm.
because they were good flavor and they were good size, right? So that's why I think, we see this range in what's out there. So yeah. So the best thing is to do is to buy the trees or trying to find a way to propagate them like we just talked about. That's probably the best thing. Grow up your own seedlings, not real tough to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you can do
So
your own top work
anything
too.
that you're
So
shipping north,
any other questions? Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Right. So he's gonna ask the question. A lot of nurseries are selling very small trees right now because they are worth so much money that people are, buying them small. And of course, it's easier for a nursery to ship a small tree. Now, if they are about a foot, they really can benefit if you
And a
do
lot
a
of
tree
people like are
shelter
getting
around
really
them or
upset
do
that
some
they're
shading
depopulating
around
or
them.
growing in long rooms.
That
Tree
first
says it
year.
kills
I
90%
I
of them
actually
anyway.
bought a
So
PA golden tree for the fun of it that's about that tall, and it was in a location I knew that it would be okay, and it only grew maybe 3 or 4
well,
inches
so
too.
yes.
So it's
So the
going down
US
this first
EPA,
year as a
so
small
US,
tree.
we are down there
Next year, you'll see
in
more top
Mexico
growth on it.
building a
So it
facility
just
with our
probably is gonna
money.
delay it. It's
But
better not to buy
because
a
we're
tree
paying
more than about
all
a foot
this
and a half tall
instead of
though
waiting for it to come
also.
to us.
If you put in big
Um,
trees,
I've talked to some
with large
people,
root systems, they
right,
don't
that
establish as well either. So
communication
the kind
between
of
the two
sweet spot
governments
is basically about a
is not
foot to
always
a
the
foot and a half
best.
tall if you can get
Right.
those.
So they're not telling
Usually
us
that means a
every
1-gallon
thing,
pot and
but
it's a little
we
more
are down there
expensive. Probably
building
worth a little
facilities, and
extra
we're still
money.
trying to go in there and help
But
fight it.
that tree will get up to
But
speed, but it will
communication's
probably
always the
add a
thing when
year
you
or
go through
so to that.
politics.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's kind of where we're at right now. The nursery industry is kind of, I'm not gonna say
Right.
cashing in because they're making a
Right.
living
Well,
off
if
of
they
this, right? And it's a lot of
that
work.
and get under
But they're
40
definitely
degrees,
doing
they
well
will
right
come back
now with
in.
the
But,
pawpaw
you know,
world. There's a lot of people willing to pay a
during the
lot.
wintertime,
Yeah.
it can get in
You can
Texas,
try and
Mississippi,
we get this
Alabama,
question quite a bit.
you know,
They're hard to transplant
places
as
where
root suckers because there's not a
it's
great
been
root
cold there.
system
Now,
underneath them. So it's difficult to do
right,
that.
we got
Sometimes you can
a
kind of
little bit of
coax them to
grace that
grow
we don't
certain
have to worry about
areas
in the
and start a
wintertime,
tree
but
that
in
way,
summer we
right?
very well may. Right?
So, but yeah, it's hard to transplant without having suffer. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
The best source for signwood that I know of right now are two places: Peaceful Heritage Nursery here in Kentucky sells signwood. In fact, he just put on
I mean,
Facebook he's
and
selling
they test milk from the
signwood right
cows. We're
now.
testing milk
And
they
then
pick up. So
Clifford
your cows
England
out there,
Nursery over here in
everybody
McKee
has one.
also sells signwood, so you can buy budwood from him too for these different varieties.
Right.
And that's not a
And there
bad
was time
route to
where
take.
everybody drank,
Yeah.
but you were used to what
So
was
we
on
do
your
have
farm.
35
And that's
nurseries
what the birds
across the
feed on.
United
You
States
can't
and
control
over in
that.
Europe licensed to sell the KSU varieties. We get a little bit of royalty back from each
Anything
one of
else?
those. So there's a lot of nurseries
All right.
out there that you'll find carrying these different, KSU varieties. So you can look at other nurseries too out there. And just if you bring them up on Google, you'll see all kinds of folks selling them. And but hopefully go. If we license them to sell, they're a reputable nursery. You can at least say that. Yeah. So all right. Well, thanks for coming out today, and have a good rest of the meeting, and stay warm this winter. I'm looking forward to snow, but I'm not. All right.
We will try to get started as close to 10:45 as possible. I know that one went over a little bit and I want to give you all adequate time for a break. But yeah, around 10:45, we'll start our next presentation.